How would you summarize the rivalry between Scotland and England?
Oh, how long do you have? It's a long story. First of all, obviously, they're neighbours, they share a landmass. Until 1603, the countries are actually separate, and there is essentially an ongoing rivalry over who is the more dominant power, essentially.
Hi, welcome back to Scotland. Currently, we are in underground mines underneath the castle of St. Andrews. So the last time we were in Scotland together, Scotland signed a treaty with the English that unified them into one country. Something good finally happened for Scotland. Just as they thought all the freedoms were taken away, they were given a better opportunity than they thought they had. What they thought was a trap was actually a blessing in disguise. England decided to pass a law called the Act of Toleration, allowing people to believe in whatever they wanted. This means that the church could no longer kill people like Thomas Aikenhead for believing differently than they did. Now that England had gotten what they want, they no longer bothered Scotland. They got bored and left them alone. That meant that the Scots in the Enlightenment never had to worry about the English getting in their way. They now had a strong government to keep them in order, but that would also leave them alone. It's kind of like recess. Even though you're still in the school and have to follow the school's rules, you get to choose who you want to play with and what you want to do. The union with the English definitely helped Scotland, but it was the Scots themselves that built the Scotland that we see today.
What a relief. Scotland is finally getting the help it needs, and England has stopped bullying them. Now the Scottish Enlightenment can really get started. Now before the Union, the trip to Darien, and all of that craziness, there was a man named John Knox. He was the man that gave all of that power to the church, power enough to kill. We are here at the John Knox house where he lived during the siege of Edinburgh. The religion at the time that he gave all that power to was called Calvinism. John Knox taught in a God that was mean, stern, and jealous, kind of like Scar from the Lion King. No wonder people were scared. He also taught that people were kind of innately bad and that they couldn't change to become better. Now fast forward to after the Union. Along came a man named Francis Hutcheson. Let's call him Hutch for short. Hutch grew up in Edinburgh under Knox's teachings, but he didn't like them, not one bit. He started having questions like, what happened to being made in God's image, and why can't we change for the better? He was still living in Edinburgh when the scary reign of the church came to an end, thanks to England's Act of Toleration. Now people were free to believe in what they wanted and speak their minds. There'd be no more deaths like Thomas Aikenhead's. Hutch had a teacher named John Simpson who, like him, questioned the old Calvinist ways. Instead, he taught that there was a kind God who knew his creations and watched them. And Hutch really liked this. But at the same time, Simpson taught that God didn't care about you, and Hutch could not accept that. He said that there had to be a middle ground between Knox's and Simpson's teachings, one that meant people were nice and good, and that didn't have a scary God. So he went out and he started teaching differently. Hutch taught that there was a kind God, that we were innately good people and we were born knowing right from wrong. He said that as humans, our biggest desire was for happiness, and the best way that we could be happy was to make others happy. Hutch Hutch was asked to come teach his beliefs here at Glasgow University. And here's a fun fact. Hutch was one of the first people to teach his beliefs in English instead of Latin. Latin is an ancient Roman language that was still being used here at the university, even though not many people knew it. By teaching in English, anyone and everyone could come and learn his teachings, and that's exactly what he wanted, for people to hear what he had to say. That's one of the ways the Scots became more enlightened. You know what? I like Hutch. He always wanted to make sure people were learning. Do you remember at the beginning of Broadcast 1, we talked about the act of setting schools, where in all the towns in Scotland, they not only had to have schools, but teachers? Well, after that, education boomed. Everyone who was anyone wanted to learn. Not only that, but every night people would get together to talk about what they learned that day. It didn't matter who you were, what you believed in, everyone got together just to talk. And the man who started these nightly talks was named Henry Holmes, who soon came to be known as Lord Kaimes. While Hutch was teaching in Glasgow, Henry started studying law so he could become a lawyer. A lawyer is someone who helps people in court because we all know just how confusing that can get. But to become a lawyer in Scotland, it was pretty hard. You had to have a lot of schooling, and on top of that, you had to pass a test called the bar, just like we have now in America. Henry passed this test when he was 27 years old and immediately began working as a lawyer. He was so good that people gave him the title of Lord Kaimes. This is what Lord Kaimes' day would look like. He'd wake up around 5 or 6 a.m. That's right, in the morning, early bird, I know. He would, at that time, study for whatever court case he had that day. Around lunch, he would go and watch his friends' court cases before he had to go to his own around 3. For dinner, no. He would skip dinner so he could study even more. It's kind of like if you skip dinner every single day to do extra credit homework. You just don't do that. At night, he would go out on the town with his wife. He loved talking to people and having good conversation. He would ask questions and really get to know people. He didn't care what your social rank was. If his family wasn't there during the day, he would talk to his workers or his gardener. It didn't matter to him. Now, Lord Kaimes, aka Henry, was a thinker. He had questions, and he too, just like Hutch, went out and started teaching his beliefs. He thought that the world had been changing since the time of the cavemen, and it would always be changing. He said with those changes, laws and rules needed to change and evolve as the people did. Kind of like how when you grow older, you get to stay up later. The rules change as you do. He thought Scotland needed to be the same way. But if the rules are always changing, there has to be something that stays the same, keeps things in balance, right? Well, Lord Kaimes thought that thing was property. He said, as people, that our most important goal was to protect our stuff. For example, you have your own backpack and your own school supplies. While at school, you can let people use those, you can share, but at the end of the day, you know that your stuff goes home with you. If someone else took your backpack home, you'd be upset, right? Well, that's exactly what Lord Kaimes is talking about. But Hutch thought differently. He said that as people, our most important thing wasn't to protect our stuff, but morality, or knowing right from wrong. What do you think? Is it more important that we be good people, or if we protect our things? And what makes better laws? One, maybe both? Tell us what you think.
Francis Hutchinson and Lord Kaimes were both very important people in the Scottish Enlightenment because they thought of new ideas and shared them with other people. Hutch was the soft, kind side, while Lord Kaimes was the hard, logical side. Both of these people had an impact on our country today. A big takeaway from today's broadcast is that anyone would talk to anyone when it came to sharing ideas. It didn't matter who you were, how much money you had, anything like that. Anyone would be friends with anyone. That way they could learn new things from new people and get even more friends. I bet that's something you could do, dare to meet someone new. Today we saw the underdog rise up. The Scottish people were now free from the church and its scary teachings, and were free to think as they wanted to. Now that they have this freedom, the party really starts. Thank you so much for watching today and submitting your questions. Make sure you catch broadcast number 3 about all the inventions that the Scots contributed. Remember to be like the Scots and dare to do. See you next time.
Did you spot Willie the Wolverine? Here's where he was in our last broadcast.